am Hercules.
Cupid! Cupid!
Lightweight, baby.
Whee! Bye!
Victory. Vomit. Lightweight, baby.
No! Must keep fighting.
I am the hero you need. Lightweight, baby. Perfect. I am Hercules.
Perfect.
Hello and welcome back to the Smite Pro League, powered by our good friends over at Alienware. If you want to use all the... You good over there, Miff? You good over there, Miff?
I'm chilling, man.
You chilling?
That's
You're
what we
chilling.
do.
Welcome over there, Mifflin. Welcome back, Mifflin, and welcome back to the Smite Pro League, as I said, powered by our good friends over at Alienware. You want to use the PCs that our players are playing on, the players that we have in the PCs that we have in our studio, the laptops that we use here on the desk. Go over to smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code AWSmite09 to see what kind of great offers that we have in store for you and the Alienware can give over to you. Make sure to follow Alienware on their social medias at Alienware on Instagram and Twitter, and go to AlienwareArena.com to see all the cool things that Alienware has to offer. Thank you so much, Alienware, for coming back in Season 9 of the SPL. Game number 1 between the Jade Dragons and the Oni Warriors is now done. And the Oni Warriors were able to fend off the storm of the early game, Mifflin. They made it through the early game of the Jade Dragons, but it just took one team fight for everything to fall apart for the Warriors.
I'm noticing a common theme in the SPL. That one team fight, it seems to be the only thing separating a whole lot of these teams between a win and a loss. But the Oni Warriors, with an unorthodox composition, were able to make their way throughout the laning phase, survive, even at times thriving just by nature of map play, even getting a couple of objectives for themselves. Sure, some steals from the Jade Dragons keep them afloat throughout the early. But once we got to that late game team fight, I really thought, that's it, GG. The Oni Warriors are going to win out with this super weirdo composition. But one misplayed team fight around the Fire Giant. The Jade Dragons make away like bandits immediately afterward, and it was clean from there. But I think the Oni Warriors gain value from game 1, and that's, hey, if you want to be weird. If you got a comp that needs a nemesis, but you got to put her in mid, could still work out. Because once they got to the 5-on-5, weren't so bad.
And as you can see, it was in that team fight there around that 25 to 27 minute mark. That was when the Jade Dragons were finally able to get the fight that they had wanted and found a favorable one up against the Oni Warriors. The Warriors spent so much of their resources killing a Yu Huang, and that's similar to when we talked about Charybdis back on launches. When you spend so much trying to kill a god that has so much survivability in their kit, 2 forms of CC immunity, beads, and Aegis buy so much time for Panda Cat that the Oni Warriors had collapsed and used everything that they had. And oh, by the way, here's Pagon getting to free cast on a Chernobog for the remainder of the fight.
Sanford Soccer as well was allowed to do just about anything that he wanted. 11 affected kills, only 1 death from the jungler of the Jade Dragons. As you said, Pagon allowed to free cast. Panda Cat, maybe not allowed to free cast because he was the target, but if he's the target, you're probably feeling pretty all right about it because of all the survivability that he's got built inherently into his kit. And then this double Guardian frontline between PBM and Finoke, Sobek, and Jingshen, respectively. Just so hard to get past. The initiation, really, was what I think carried the Jade Dragons in that Phoenix Siege towards that 31-minute mark. It was, hey, we've got Plux. We've got Whirlwind of Rage and Steel. That's really all you need.
Yeah, I mean, Mike able to pick up both of the frontliners of the Warriors and throw them into the hands of everybody else on his team. And the instant that Neil and Nika both touched the ground, they were dead at that point. And that's an easy pickings for the Jade Dragons. They take game number 1 and put themselves that much closer to closing out the set with a potential 2-0. But signs of life out of the Oni Warriors, and I think that's the important takeaway there, is that they made it through the early game. They made it through their weakest point. They made it through the Jade Dragon's strongest point of the game. Now they just need to make it through that end game and actually have that team fight to kind of go through, and maybe drafting a little bit more of an orthodox style, maybe getting a traditional mage or a second long-range damage dealer out there could do them wonders in game 2.
Yeah, mages are just so good on base defense that I think when you essentially forego an orthodox mage, you're saying, hey, we are playing to win, and that's it. The second we're on the back foot, it is a severe disadvantage. You need that AoE damage. You need that long-range artillery to keep minion waves out and sustain through the poke war that is already favoring the team on siege, because for the most part, they've got Fire Giant to regenerate them. So the Oni Warriors, once they had lost out on that FG, really lost out in a lot of value of their composition. But again, it worked out throughout the early. They did get to that late game team fight, and it was thin margins that the Jade Dragons were able to win out by. So I don't think the Oni Warriors need to completely forego the strategies they had developed coming into today. If they really want to keep with the unorthodox style, I think they showed me enough in game 1 that it's got my vote of confidence.
Well, as far as the bans are concerned, Jade Dragons won't change up any of theirs. It'll still be the Dodgy, Osiris, and AMC banned away by the Order side team. Oni Warriors, on the other hand, will make an immediate game number 1 that gets banned away. But now adding Xing Chen into the mix. So a little tired of what PBM was able to do on that god, the constant initiations he was able to find, the multi-man ultimates that Mike was hitting in those late game team fights. Oni Warriors want nothing to do with that.
No, and now they'll have to deal with Mike playing maybe one of his other aggressive selections, right? It feels like Xing Chen as a ban is just, hey, please, it didn't go great for us. Whirlwind Rage of Steel is so strong against our weirdo draft. Our Nemesis mid wasn't allowed to stand close to anybody because of this massive AoE CC. So we'll go ahead and deal with that. Chernobog rounds out the bans for the Oni Warriors, and now the Jade Dragons in first pick position yet again have got choice of the field. Was Chernobog in that first slot in game 1, but having been taken away now, they'll have to dig a little bit deeper. We know Panicat likes the Yu Huang into Freya matchup, but we similarly know that Panicat just likes the Freya up against the Solar Scares. They had taken it first overall, I believe, 2 of their matches, so could be a Freya selection here. Yu Huang hovered. I suppose if you're worried about vote going back towards it, the Freya that is, might as well just get your counter matchup off rip.
Yu Huang will be
First
locked
pick.
in first for the Jade Dragons, and now a lot on the table for the Oni Warriors to grab. They can go back to the Artio that was doing well for Nika, and they will indeed. That one gets locked in right away. Pick of the litter for jungle. I mean, Nemesis is still open if they want to actually get that one for Cuvo this time. They even have Mercury available if the Oni Warriors want to grab that one, though we've been seeing mixed success as far as Mercury is concerned in the SPL, sitting, I think, actually a little bit under that 50% mark right now.
Despite the best efforts of Sanford Soccer, I think pretty winning on the Mercury for the Jade Dragons, so we could still see it locked in if they so choose. The Morgan, the second overall selection for the Oni Warriors. Some good transformation targets already. Artio in the late game, nearly unkillable, but you better believe there's going to be a couple more throughout. Worth noting that you really don't want to transform into Artio early game. Generally, the Morgan maxes out her second ability. So like a max cripple field or a max stun. Probably not the best usage of your time, but everybody's maxed out at around level 20. And then you can just become another unkillable initiator that also has some in-combat healing for your team. The Jade Dragons thinking hard about their second phase of picks. Maybe you want to go ahead and select a soul laner here. That could be a soul laner, could be a jungler, could be a support. Feels like it's been a little while since we've seen Ymir consistently. Genetics comes to mind as one of the premier Ymir players in the league. And he plays support, so I'll hedge my bets there.
Potentially so. Now, of the last 7 games that Mike has played, 1 was a Baron, 1 was a Xing Chen. The other 5 were Fafnir. So we're seeing a little bit of diversity now, at least out of PVM is concerned, as far as that god pool goes. Though, again, we can still have to wait to see exactly where this Ymir does get locked in. Though, if history is any indication of the performance of this god in the Pro League, support is probably the safest place to put your bets there. Now, the Oni Warriors, with their mid and their solo locked in, have a lot that they can grab. Ymir, one of the biggest struggles that he has is his immobility. Nemesis could be a nice pick if they want to grab their jungle, but who cares about grabbing the jungle? I'll just go ahead and stop talking about jungle at this
God, those
point, because
cats
Jingwei
incessant.
is available, and the Oni Warriors will grab that one for vote.
Good deal of safety, CC immunity the ultimate, so if it is Ymir in the support role, you don't have to worry so much about the wall into freeze, as long as that ultimate's still up. If it's down, you're pretty concerned. I am surprised that the Oni Warriors don't even consider going towards the Khepri. It would play very well against this essentially single target DPS composition between Ul and Yu Huang. It's a pick that has had major success so far in the SPL. Now the Jade Dragons have the opportunity to go ahead and ban that out if they so choose, or they could start targeting out a couple of these periphery picks. Achilles taken off the table. They don't want to deal with it, and it seems like Dardes is confused. My man threw the hand up.
He's like, Wait, an Achilles? Man, that seems a little bit out there. Now, granted, over towards Cuvo did have all of the kills that his team got in that previous game, all
Maybe
5 of them.
deserves the ban,
so
right?
maybe take the ban that way. End up, I think, 5-4 was his final slash line as far as the KD was concerned, but J Dragons will not want to deal with that execute. Meanwhile, it'll be a Sobek ban by the Oni Warriors, again, recognizing the frontline pressure that the J Dragons have put between the whirlwinds of Rage of Steels at the Xingqian and the Plucks that were coming from Final K on the Sobek. The Oni Warriors do not want to deal with that extra form of CC, and maybe one more potential target ban over towards Solo could go the way. We've been seeing a little bit less of the Warriors over there, though King Arthur's still notably something that Final K does like to go back towards in that lane.
And with the Guardians, or the primary suspect Guardian Soul Laners banned out now, Cthulhu from the Oni Warriors, I think you might be right in bringing up the King Arthur. I'd also briefly assumed we might see a Robin, but the Jade Dragons target that one out immediately. Been a severe lack of Robin over the last set or so.
True.
That mitigation build still exists, and it is still incredibly strong, but it is slow rolling. So the Jade Dragons, a team that like to bring the pressure early, might stray away from that style of play.
And we also can't dismiss the fact that Robin still could go over into the jungle, and something that Cuvo Fred does like to play. The Oni Warriors will pick up their Guardian now. It will be Ganesh locked in for Neil Ma. So we've got the dual lane now of the Oni Warriors. It's just going to come down to what Cuvo wants. And typically when it comes to an Oni Warriors draft, Cuvo is not often the last pick for his team. He's usually one of those top 2 or even top 3 picks.
And there's some of Cuvo's favorite selections still out there. You could pick up the Nemesis for the jungle this time around. Da Ji available, has decent matchup into the Ul at least. Doesn't really ever work up against Yu Huang. Ymir to a certain extent with the Ice Shards should be able to avoid the pull-in, but if you're forcing at least an ultimate, or at least putting pressure onto the Ul, I think Pao Lao has got enough value to merit a pick in of that in itself. But the Jade Dragons have got choice first. I just gotta assume you're looking potentially towards another Hunbat selection. Pretty decent into the Morrigan, pretty great performance as well. Nemesis Hover could be taking note. Hey, we don't want the Oni Warriors or Cuvo Fred getting his or one of his most comfortable picks.
Yeah, definitely. So they've dissuaded the Oni Warriors from that pick. So now that we have a more traditional style of composition out of the Oni Warriors, how do you feel about their chances up against the Jade Dragons and their composition they've drafted?
I like this Oni Warriors draft a fair bit. Ardio should be able to hold her own in lane, should get pretty decent pressure around the Totemaku as well. Conduit Gem just really has boosted these Guardian Solos' ability to clear out. So generally it used to be, hey, there's a Warrior versus a Guardian matchup. The Warrior's going to control Totemaku. I don't think it's as simple as it once was. You've got decent objective burn potential thanks to this Ganesh. Dharmic Pillars on its own, just such a high DPS ability in conjunction with Jingwei, who's likely going towards crit, should be able to make short work of these objectives. I think the 5-on-5 engagement might be a bit more equalized, or even favors the Jade Dragons at points. The Susanoo ultimate is going to be so disruptive for almost the entirety of the Oni Warriors draft. Sure, Jingwei can dash out of the knockup, but besides that, pretty easy targets for the Susanoo to line up. Ul should bring pressure early on. Where he's going to bring that pressure, TBD, we never know, between Pagon and Pandacat, where either one of these two selections is going to go. But because Yu Huang is locked in, and we don't have a Freya on the other side, maybe we get the standard mage and mid with the ADC and the duo.
Yeah, potentially Pagon goes to something more traditional. Typically when we do see him go to the mages is Thoth more often than not, but gotta imagine that Yu Huang is right up his wheelhouse along with the rest of the mid laners in the SPL. So when you're maybe now looking at this soul lane matchup, Kakulin versus Ardio, probably not a whole lot of action to be had over there, but do you think that there's maybe some potential pressure that the Susanoo could put over on the Oni Warriors, maybe try and keep Nika or keep Cuvo Fred down?
Decent matchup into the Morrigan. If I'm Susanoo, I'm loving that. Yeah, you could even go into the stealth, but he's got such large abilities, the first and second, that you could, if you're already close range, which he does, knock her out of it pretty easily, chase down with the ultimate. So I could see the Susanoo putting a lot of pressure towards the center of the map. Besides that, I know Jingwei is pretty survivable, but Susanoo is uniquely qualified and uniquely good at chasing down just about anybody, Yanis is included. Why not stick to a Jingwei?
We'll have to see exactly where the Susanoo decides to put his pressure. Where's Sam? We'll get to go with the Jade Dragons. Can the Jade Dragons 2-0 the Oni Warriors, or are we going to get some fight back out of the Warriors and take us to Game 3? Before we get to there, we got to get through Game 2.
That's right, the Oni Warriors draft themselves a solid composition as far as bounce back potential goes, but the Jade Dragons bring us some high octane, action-packed potential for Game 2. Susanoo for Sam, Uller for Pagon, Pandacat back on the Yu Huang. All three of these pick score for the Jade Dragons feel like they've got playmaking, carry potential for the Dragons in game 2.
A lot of good damage behind him. I mean, it is going to be a little, maybe less standard than what we've seen, but not that less standard, right? I mean, when you look at their team fight, it's the exact same as what you would see out of a normal composition. It's just the early game where they're in the lane phase that things are going to be a little different. But I've seen enough Pagon on this Uller that I am sold on it. I do not need to be convinced that this is going to be successful. On the other side, though, I think they've got some really good fight back. The only downside I have, and this is just a downside I have with Finrear in general, not necessarily Cuvo playing it, is that you have to commit pretty heavily to going in.
Yep.
I think the last time we saw it, or at least I know yesterday in the SEC, there was at one point, I want to say in the last couple of weeks as well. The problem is you end up great jukes, by the way, from Cuvo.
Yep.
My God, that was insane for him to just be able to dodge out as much as he did. But, you know, we'll see someone leap in, get a stun, go for a brutalize, immediately have to cancel and use their ult to get away.
Pagon hits the stun, gets the beads off of Dardes. Chaotic in the first couple of levels there. Pagon jumps up and over. Dardes and Cuvo Fred was on the opposite side of the lane from his own tower. And everyone ends up staying alive there. Cuvo Fred just a bit behind, reach level 2 just now on one of those back camps. I agree though, playmaking at an all-time high as far as potential goes. Now I look at the Oni Warriors comp gore, seems a bit more straightforward. I do wonder though, what Dardes ends up thinking with Morgan transformations throughout this game, and I'll let you think about it a bit. It's fine, okay, we'll take some damage and a root.